interesting matchup over here on our Karn table. Kevin Gerhart, as we mentioned, playing Shardless Bug and with one draw to his name. Christopher Walton playing Reanimator. This is obviously combo on Bug, and I don't generally like to be the Bug player against some of these combo decks, and Reanimator's one where it's so much about the hate cards you draw. Obviously, Shardless Bug has access to Deathrite Shaman, Postboard has access to Nihil Spell Bombs, but if you're not finding those cards, a lot of your cards are just nothing against this deck.
Now, Reanimator, one of the many ways to have an unfair turn. If you're not familiar with Reanimator, because it has been probably about a year, maybe a little bit longer since we've seen it in the limelight, Reanimator will spend one black or one blue to either discard a card from hand or to search the library and put a creature into the graveyard that's absurd in some way. And then it'll bring it back to life, and that cheats, say, a Gristlebrand into play, at which point, most of the time, the game ends.
Yeah, the Reanimator deck has access to a wide selection of fatties. The three in the main deck are Elishnorn, Iona, Shield of Emeria, and Tidespout Tyrant, alongside 4 Gristlebrands. And then in the sideboard, he has access to a Singleton Imperial Archangel and a Singleton Ashen Rider as well. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of mix he actually has post-board against Shardless Bug. I'm actually quite curious to see what it is.
Thoughtseize to start.
Kevin Gerhart sitting on a lot of blue cards on a Force of Will, I see. He's got Jace, Brainstorm, Force of Will, him, Tarmogoyf, Liliana, and a Singleton land, Creeping Tar Pit. So clearly kind of keeping on the strength of that Force of Will and hoping that Brainstorm can dig him into the mana and advantage he'll actually need to win the game. But Christopher takes that plan apart, Thoughtseizing the Force of Will right off the bat.
That is a one-land hand, so I mean, it is fairly tenuous. With a lot of these decks that we see in Legacy, they use Brainstorm as a means to cheat, so to speak, on the mana counts that they have in their deck. 23 land here. We see Creeping Tar Pit as the opener.
Yeah, Kevin draws a second Hymn to Torok, which is a pretty fragile hate card against Reanimator. Obviously, there's the chance that you actually, randomly just hit one of their fatties and put that in the bin, but that's usually not that large a concern. As the Reanimator deck has access to lots of ways to get fatties out of their hand, or will frequently Brainstorm them back into the deck anyway in a play like this that Christopher's making. So, hymning on turn 2, I would not be super concerned about enabling a turn 3 Reanimate. The problem is that him might not actually stop a turn 3 Reanimate unless it randomly hits the reanimation spell. So
yeah, well, one thing that we saw a very long time ago at the Invitational in Los Angeles a million years ago, Jerry Thompson keeping in hymns in this matchup, basically because, you know what, he doesn't have anything better to do, and there's only 7 creatures in a deck like this.
He's going to basically just do what he can, hope to create some disruption, slow Christopher down a little bit. If Christopher kept a cantrip-heavy hand, then him, could theoretically just hit 2 cantrips and actually put Kevin potentially in the driver's seat. But in this particular game, Kevin's going to need to draw a land to even try and do that. So that's not ideal.
Now remember, we are in a game 3, so these players have access to their sideboards. From the sideboard, we already talked about the Nihil Spellbomb as a possibility. Duress is another possibility. And I don't know if I would go any further beyond that.
Well, we know that Kevin brought in all of the
Force
Force of Wills.
Besides the Force of Wills, my bad. That Force of Wills, definitely.
And Ashiok Nightmare Weaver is pretty adorable, but I don't think I would go for it.
I think adorable is the right word for it.
I mean, if you can +2 Ashiok twice, you got a pretty good shot at hitting a Gristle B.
Oh,
but,
boy.
I'm kind of not that interested. Maybe on the play, I might bring that one in. Turn 1 Deathrite into turn 2 Ashiok, before my opponent is frequently going to be threatening to actually put something awesome onto the table, but that's a bold move.
We see Lotus Petal joining Christopher Walton's side of the table, and a main phase Brainstorm from Kevin Gerhart does find a land, and even better yet, it is a fetch land. Wow,
it's a fetch land, a Nihil Spellbomb, and a Force of Will. I don't think he could have picked a better Brainstorm if he was trying.
Yeah, I mean, we could call that almost a Ancestral Recall style of draw there. Yeah. Wow. Yes, 2 cards went back, but when you get that much gas, it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, I'm sure he threw back one of his hymns. He may have even debated throwing back both. I'm thinking the Liliana and a hymn. That's my guess. Liliana it's going to be tough for her to be especially good in this situation. He's behind on cards. He's behind on mana. Entering into an attrition fight against a Reanimator deck, it's like, well, I guess I can edict that Gristlebrand off the table, but that's probably not going to work out in the long run.
For students of Magic history or people who've been playing for over 10 years, the Reanimator deck, as well as the show and tell lists that run Gristlebrand, play a lot like tricks, so that you get a huge card draw engine into play, and then you draw Force of Wills and all kinds of other problems, so you don't lose at all on that turn. And then you just finish them off and then draw more cards and then kill them.
Well, Christopher found a fatty and a way to get in the graveyard. He careful studies discarding Iona. That's going to force Kevin to pop Nihil Spellbomb when he tries to exhume. In response after the Nihil Spellbomb resolves, Christopher, in response to his own exhume, is going to try Entomb to get another fatty.
Oh my lord.
Wow, just has everything. Kevin Force of Wills and Daze counters the Force. Christopher's gonna go get a fatty. It's a Gristlebrand.
Now, as I was saying just a moment ago about how this feels like tricks, you would get a Necropotence into play with tricks, and then lo and behold, you would have a full handful of cards that would keep your opponent from being able to finish you off. And in this case, it's Gristlebrand. Gristlebrand's going to be able to draw 7 cards for Christopher Walton. He emptied out everything to get this card into play. Kevin Gerhart put up a huge fight, but now all that's going to happen, Christopher Walton is going to go up to a full grip.
When we're in a situation like this, I kind of like to think about, what could have happened. As it's not the craziest thing, it's a pretty bold thing to let Exhume for Iona go, because you have Jace and Liliana in your hand. So you actually have 2 different colors of answers to the Iona available, and you're going to need to peel lands to play either one, but Christopher also knows about both of them. So he's likely going to have to name black so that you can't just hit a land and Liliana him off the bat, right? So that means you're still going to have access to all of your blue cantrips. You're a little more likely to find that land, so it's actually kind of an interesting spot if Kevin, decides to call that Exhume a bait play,
right,
and just let it go.
Christopher Walton activates the Gristlebrand a second time. This puts him up to 14 cards in hand, 15 with the land from the Daze. And you know what? I did see a Force of Will in there. He's at a paltry 3 life, but I don't think it's going to matter.
Yeah, for now he's at 3 life. Kevin doesn't have a way to get that Gristlebrand off the table. Even if he peels a land and casts the Liliana, we know that Christopher has access to Force of Will to shut it down, and then he'll be rocketing right back up to almost double-digit life total. Pitches a bunch of cards and sends the turn over to Kevin. Kevin just has a Tarmogoyf, and it's a reasonably large Tarmogoyf, as Tarmogoyfs go, but...
Another Daze.
Yep.
Christopher Walton's having none of it. What he wants to be able to do here is be able to attack with the Gristlebrand, gain the 7 life, and then completely refill his hand, should anything go awry.
Yeah, he's pretty well set up. He has a full grip. He's going to put his land back into play this turn. And Pithing Needle...
Liliana, maybe?
I imagine Liliana.
There we go. That's it.
That earns it. All right. That's a pretty dynamic situation. Kevin keeping the kind of hand you actually are a little obligated to keep in these combo mirrors, I think, because the premise of having multiple sideboard cards potentially accessible is a big deal in Force on turn 1. It's a matchup you're behind in when you're on the draw, I think, because even if you turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, the opponent could actually just kill the Deathrite Shaman, or you, basically, by getting the Gristlebrand into play on turn 2 before it ever even loses Summoning Sickness.
One of the things that we look at Kevin Gerhart's list, he lost here 2-1, and I think the way that his list is put together with all of the Force of Wills in the sideboard and only 2 graveyard attack spells, this is probably a matchup that he's a little bit softer to than another version of this deck might be. There is a little bit of play when you